Hello everyone. Today Team E of Dar, Nikita and Sonam are going to present the presentation on the ethical marketing of sunscreen in tourism. So before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that the campus is located on the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwangan ancestors and families who have lived here for thousands of years. We are privileged to share this land, live and learn here. The agenda for our presentation is as follows. We will begin with defining the key terms in order to better comprehend the concept of ethics, marketing ethics, and tourism marketing, and we will move forward to present the real world issue resulting from the unethical marketing of sunscreen in the tourism industry and its impact on the environment and humans. Once we are clear about the impacts related to the sunscreen, we will dive into the Kohlberg theory of moral development to understand what is morally right for the stakeholders, which are businesses, consumers, and government, and what role they can play in ethical marketing of sunscreen to protect the environment and humans. After that, we will explore ethical marketing strategies of sunscreen and how manufacturers can follow ethical marketing practice so that the consumer can make ethical choices. And lastly, we will provide some recommendations that stakeholders can take to promote ethical marketing of sunscreen in the real world. The world's coastal population and coastal tourism are expected to grow during this century, and it is anticipated that the use of sunscreen and cosmetics containing UV filters will rise further. Sunscreen pollution can have an adverse effect on marine and aquatic ecosystems and be a sign of unsustainable tourism and coastal development. The chemical pollutants including in sunscreen and other cosmetic goods are increasing the pollution burden on coral reefs. Environmental pollution by sunscreen contaminants is not only a threat to wildlife but also to humans. Personal care and cosmetic sun product production and consumption are rising to unanticipated levels on a global scale, which could have significant effects on environmental contamination. Around 10% of the world coral reefs would be threatened by sunscreen induced coral bleaching. Each year, thousands of tons of manufactured sunscreens carrying chemicals harmful to coral enter our waters. According to Donovan 2008, swimmers are projected to use between 4,000 to 6,000 metric tons of sunscreen per year, which has the potential to cause localized coral damage. So let's begin with defining the key terms first. Ethic provides a sense of right and wrong as well as useful rules for living. According to Fennell 2019, ethics can be defined as what is good or bad, or right or wrong in business, the environment, medicine, and a whole host of other applied realms. It is a set of beliefs that govern behavior, particularly behavior based on morals. Before we dive into the examples, let's take a moment to clarify what marketing ethic means. According to Gasky 1999, marketing ethics could be considered as standard of conduct and moral judgment applied to marketing practice. Murphy et al. 2005 defined marketing ethics as a systematic study of how moral standards are applied to marketing decisions, behaviors, and institutions. So basically, marketing ethics are a set of moral principles that guide a company's promotional activities. And finally, tourism marketing that can be simply understood as discovering what tourists want. According to Wheeler 1995, the role of tourism marketing revolves around effective segmentation, communicating more appropriate message about the destination and the reality of the environment's fragility.
So, we all know how vital it is to put a bottle of sunscreen in our holiday suitcase. And then, after it is leaked all over our holiday clothes, we all know how vital it is to buy another one. It is like one of those unpleasant, expensive necessities that we would rather not take on holidays with us, but we have to. A bit like travel insurance or children. In research from Marson et al., skin cancer accounts for the greatest incidence of new cancer in the US. It accounts for 6 billion healthcare expenditures annually by the United States. One of the primary drivers of the skin cancer is the exposure to the ultraviolet radiation. Known methods to reduce the harmful UVR exposure includes decreased time in direct sunlight, seeking shades, wearing dark-colored clothes, and regularly applying and reapplying the sunscreens. However, sunscreen has its impacts on the human body as well as the environment. Let's see how. Sunscreen contains chemicals or physical compounds which can be organic or inorganic that acts to block the UV radiation, which is light with wavelengths shorter than visible light. Taking into account the effects induced by the UV radiation on skin, it is important to consider the length of exposure, distinguishing between acute and chronic exposures, as well as the influence of the environmental conditions. These include deterioration of the ozone layer, the exposure of parts of the human body, skin pigmentation, and the previous exposures. As acute exposure to UV radiation leads to dark pigmentation of skin, it can also lead to premature aging caused by destruction of elastin and collagen fibers in the dermis, which can lead to skin cancer and tumor, which is common kind of cancers in the humans. For this reason, there are many public health programs aimed at establishing measures for sunscreen to reduce the risk of cancer. However, sunscreens also have adverse effect on the human body. In 2019 and 2020, Food and Drugs Act Canada published studies showing the toxic ingredients such as oxybenzone, oxynosate, oxysalate, octocrylene, homosalate, and avenobenzone are all systematically absorbed in the body after and could be detected on the skin and in the bloods week after its application is ended. The UV filters get absorbed in the body and affects the internal parts and organs of the humans. After applying chemically modified substances to the body, it can result into various diseases and deformities. Sunscreen contains chemicals that can irritate the skin, causing burning, redness, swollen, irritation, and itching. Some people also experience severe allergic response including rashes and itching. Chemicals in sunscreen such as perfumes and preservatives are also contributing factors to the allergic reaction. These chemicals are capable of altering the reproductive system in both males as well as females. The impact on the environment. The fastest growing segment of the global tourism industry is the coastal and the marine tourism. The expansion of this industry includes the construction of the facilities such as hotels, vacation homes, and marinas, and the water sports and activities such as recreational fishing, yachting, and diving. Numerous studies have documented the harm of these activities to the coastal habitats. Consequently, some of these effects of coastal tourism includes environmental degradation and pollution caused by yacht fuel, littering, and a temporary increase in terrestrial runoff. It also leads to the habitat destruction of the coastal reef destruction due to excessive visitation and the damage to the sand dune ecosystem such as loss of sandy beaches due to onshore construction. The effect of sunscreens as a source of new chemicals in the coastal marine system have not been addressed adequately. The sunscreen we apply may not stay on our skin. When we swim or shower, the sunscreen may get washed off and enter our waterways. This explains how it reaches our environment. The chemical compounds contained in sunscreen and other personal care products have been demonstrated to reach detectable levels both in fresh water and the seawater systems. These compounds are expected to be potentially harmful to the environment. Hence, the use of sunscreen products is now banned in a few popular destinations, for example, the Marine Eco Park in Mexico. In new research from sunscreen chemicals and coral reef, the sunscreen chemicals also have significant impact on the marine life. It can impair the growth and photosynthesis of green algae. Upon swimming, the toxic chemicals get accumulated in the tissue of corals, which can lead to bleaching, damage the DNA, deform young corals, and even kill them. It also induces defects in the young mussels. Additionally, sunscreens can affect the reproductive system, cause deformities, and can accumulate in the tissue of the sea urchins, fish, as well as the dolphins. This slide explains the five examples of the coral reefs that are currently under threat and are dying. The first is the Great Barrier Reef. It is the largest and the longest reef system in the world that has experienced some of the most severe effects caused by coral bleaching and the climate change. The most noticeable mass bleaching events caused in 2016 and 17, out of which 50% of Australia's famous reef is already dead. In Indonesia, nearly 95% of the coral reefs are currently under threat due to plastic pollution and overfishing. According to the scientists, ocean acidification, 15% of the coral reef in the region will have the adequate ability to recover by 2050. The Pacific Ocean experienced the longest and the most destructive coral bleaching, which happened in 2014 and 17. It was caused by a climate phenomenon known as El Nino, which includes warming of the surface of waters. In Hawaii, a number of reef systems in Maui have recorded a loss of nearly 25% of the corals due to increased human activities. As discussed in previous slide, the local governments have taken various measures to revitalize and protect its reef system, including banning the use of sunscreen that contains oxybenzone and octinoxate, which are chemicals that cause coral bleaching and other harmful impacts. In the Canadian islands, the coral reefs are the main attraction of the tourists. The health of the reef system has increasingly declined. According to the World Resource Institute, nearly two-thirds of the coral reefs in the Caribbean are threatened by human activities, while an estimated one third is threatened by the coastal development, such as construction and sewage discharge. Furthermore, the overfishing in the region contributes to 60% of the reef's health. Now, who is responsible to take care of this issue? Or what the individual stakeholders' reasons are doing to improve this condition? We cannot solely blame one entity, but let us look it through the lens of where the individual reasoning of the stakeholders fall in Kohlberg's stage of moral development. For that, let us discuss each stage of the Kohlberg's theory means.
Okay, now who is responsible to take care of this issue? Or what the individual stakeholders' reasons are for making that decision? We cannot blame solely on one entity, but let's look at the stakeholders' reasoning and see where their moral reasoning falls in Culver's stages of moral development. For that, let us first discuss briefly what each stages of Culver's theory mean. Elm stated that Colbus stages of moral development consist of three levels and each level consists of two stages, making a total of six stages. The first level is the pre-conventional level, which is solely based on self-interest. People in this stage try to avoid punishment, and in stage 2, people's main intention is self-growth through profit. The second level is the conventional level, where people are more oriented towards what others might think of them and try to live up to their close ones' expectations. And in stage 4, they try to follow the laws and order of their society and try to live up to the expectations of society as a general. Basically, for the first and the second level, the locus of control for the decision maker is external. Finally, the third level, which is the post-conventional level, reflects a mode of reasoning that has progressed beyond the influence of external sources and is internally driven and self-regulating. Stage 5 bases their reasoning on community-based notions of justice, and in stage 6, the reasoning moves beyond the locus of community to a universal perspective. With that understanding of Kolber's moral development stages, let's find out where each stakeholder's level of reasoning falls. Product and brand management generally, the business, are one stakeholder involved in the chain of sunscreen marketing. So let us see their moral reasoning and where it falls. According to Wall Street Mojo editorial team, profit motive refers to an entity's intention that drives the entity to indulge in profit-making activities to achieve financial gain and profit. This powerful force motivates the entity to attain and accumulate wealth until the need or desire is satisfied. There is no right reason to run a business without achieving economic benefit, no matter its scale or size. Thus, businesses forms a brand. As you may know, a brand is a name, term, sign, symbol, or design, or a combination of this intended to identify the goods or services of one seller or group of sellers and to differentiate them from those of competitors. Here, the sunscreen brand is formed not only considering the need of the consumer, but firstly for their self interest and consistently aiming for profit. The moral reasoning level a business uses to address ethical issue is influenced by self-interest first. Hence, it aligns with the pre-conventional label of Colbert's theory of moral development. However, the question is, what are the best ethical practices as it relates to marketing messages the businesses provide on their product for the consumer? According to Pearson, the question remains as to what extent manufacturers and marketers might be held responsible for the effects of their products on the society. The key issue is information, and in particular the type and level of information provided on the packaging and in advertising. Let's take this example. These are sunscreen with different benefits. In panel A, the sunscreen is meant for protection against skin cancer and skin aging. On the other hand, the sunscreen in panel B is protective against sunburn only. However, this information is not provided on the labels, so if you were the consumer who just want to be safe from sunburn, provided that this information is not on the label, which sunscreen would you choose? And why? It is a bit confusing, right? So let's see what the consumer or the tourist would generally do. Mueller et al. Mentioned that a growing number of consumers are already concerned about the potential effects of sunscreen on coral reefs. However, there are two types of consumers, such as ethical consumers who have different expressions, concerns, and issues for everyone. Examples of ethical concerns for ethically minded individuals include environmental or green issues, sustainability concerns, workers' rights, country of origin, arms trade, fair trade, and animal welfare. On the other hand, some consumers do know the impacts of certain products on the environment, but they cannot avoid buying since the products best suit their skin type. For instance, lack of information did mean that social responsibility was not high on their purchasing agenda. If they like and regularly bought a product, they would find it hard to boycott over unethical behavior, as purchasing criteria depends upon price, value, quality, and brand familiarity and personal reasons rather than societal one. However, if they were made aware of any unethical or irresponsible corporate behavior through media exposure, this would affect the purchasing decision. From the consumer perspective, their reason for purchasing sunscreen depends firstly on the type of sunscreen they have gotten used to, thus their reasoning falls in stage 2 of Kohlberg's. Further, depending on their concern for the environment and what others might think of them if they use products that are harmful to the environment, the consumer reasoning will best fit in stage 3 of the conventional label. So, if the businesses and consumers are doing their part, what is the role of the government, or where does the ethical decision-making behavior of the government will fall? As different countries have different regulatory agencies that are responsible for approving or stating guidelines for cosmetics, we will take Canada as an example and explore how Health Canada regulates the safety requirement of cosmetics. Health Canada does not have legislative power to approve cosmetics before they are sold in Canada. However, Section 16 of the FDA prohibits manufacturers from selling cosmetics with ingredients that may cause injury to the user when the product is used. Health Canada have also set the rule that manufacturers and importers are required to submit a cosmetic notification form to Health Canada, and the form includes specific formulation information about the product such as ingredients and their concentrations. Health Canada have also taken steps to help protect consumers from health or safety risks related to cosmetics by assessing and managing the health risks and safety hazards associated with cosmetics, providing importers, manufacturers, and distributors with information and guidance to help them meet regulatory requirements. Health Canada works closely with Canada Border Service Agency to target specific cosmetics or companies at the border if imported products are identified as risks. In addition, Health Canada works with Environment and Climate Change Canada to conduct risk assessment on these substances in various products used by consumers such as cosmetics. Health Canada engages and informs Canadians on health important issues by publishing recalls and safety alerts, providing a way for consumers to report issues or concerns. So, government and the act of governing have been part of human society for thousands of years, as we all know. Governments have shifted and changed in the way they represent, operate, and control, but one thing remains the same. They are created to organize group of people and provide structure and accountability. Understanding the concept of government is vital for understanding how the world functions. Thus, the moral reasoning of the government falls in stage 6 of the post conventional level, since government reasoning moves beyond the focus of community to a universal perspective.
So now let's take a look at how manufacturers can follow ethical marketing practices of sunscreen. As consumers are concerned about the potential impacts of sunscreen products on the coral environment, manufacturers have already started acting upon these concerns by incorporating claims such as reef safe and reef friendly into their marketing strategies of their sunscreen products. The independent EU advisory, which is the scientific committee for consumer safety, must give a favorable evaluation before the sunscreen or UV filter ingredient in cosmetics can be marketed in the EU. Once the assessment is favorable, the EU Commission will normally approve it, allowing it to be added to the relevant annex and allowing use in the EU. To promote their products as safe for use on coral reefs, manufacturers utilize a variety of labels or claims, as is sunscreen with 45% and 44% of all products respectively, using the terms reef friendly and reef safe was the most often used marketing promise. Additionally, some manufacturers begin labeling and promoting their goods as complying with other destination bills and regulations such as Hawaii Safe. Many brands noted oxybenzone free on their labels or product packaging due to oxybenzone negative effects on the coral reefs. To help consumers become more aware of the environment, mineral sunscreen companies began marketing educational content on their platforms to inform them about the effects of UV filters on coral reefs. However, there is no law that governs any of the used terminology claiming that the given product is safe for coral or the reef environment, because sunscreen comes with a variety of marketing claims and different aesthetic applications. Manufacturers must use simple language and descriptions that are easy enough for consumers to understand in order to sell their products in an ethical manner and allow consumers to make an ethical purchase decision. This is because very often consumers are easily duped by the scientific jargon. Additionally, manufacturers really do need to abide by the codes and standards for advertising, because it frequently deceives, hurts, and offends consumers. According to Parson 2019, a higher level of anxiety and insecurity in society has been attributed to commercials because they frequently promote social comparison with romanticized representation of their products. Now, let's talk about some recommendations to address this problem. Particularly in regions with significant levels of marine-based tourism, a proactive and preventive approach is required due to the toxicity of some sunscreen ingredients to coral and other marine species. The primary need is to lessen the number of toxic sunscreen ingredients that enter the reef ecosystems. To address this problem, first recommendation is encouraging the manufacture of reef-friendly sunscreens. Before a sunscreen may be sold, manufacturers must abide by strict standards that outline the maximum concentration of acceptable UV filters. In addition to ensuring human safety, these standards also take environmental issues into account. Second recommendation is promoting the use of reef-friendly sunscreen and other methods of UV protection. There are more and more sunscreens available currently that are regarded as eco-friendly, secure, and coral reef safe. Many local government, reef managers, tour operators, dive shops, and non-profit organizations run campaigns on environmental issues including marine trash, endangered species prevention, and reef ethics. These efforts might be broadened to include sunscreens. Third recommendation is regulating the sale and use of sunscreen containing toxins. In Mexico and Hawaii, the following strategy is being used. In Mexico, it is prohibited to apply sunscreen at the Scarlet and Hexal natural reserves because they are known to contain harmful substances. A sample of biodegradable sunscreen is offered at the park entrance, and visitors are required to turn in their non-biodegradable sunscreens for the duration of their stay. When they depart, their own sunscreen is returned. In Hawaii, initiatives are being made to forbid the sale of oxybenzone in the entire state. If this is effective, it would be outlawed the sale of goods containing oxybenzone, but would not completely outlaw the usage due to the potential importation of sunscreen by foreign tourists. Third is exerting consumer pressure to encourage development and use of eco-friendly sunscreen. The major sunscreen producers could be hesitant to alter tried and true formulations, and they probably would still not do it unless required to by official regulations, or if doing so would increase their profitability. Campaigns driven by consumer and or retailers can be very powerful forces for change. And lastly, introducing financial incentives for manufacture and use of potentially damaging sunscreens. Since UV filters are permitted, it would be conceivable to impose a charge on those deemed to be harmful to the environment. In return, they might motivate producers to use less and switch to environmentally beneficial solutions. In conclusion, we can say that the impact of sunscreen may not be visible in short term, but in long term it can have negative impacts on the environment and humans. Thousands of tons of synthetic sunscreen enter our oceans each year, carrying with them coral toxic chemicals. So, it is essential that the impacts of sunscreen on coral reef is assessed and addressed. It is important that all stakeholders should come together and practice good marketing ethics so that the impacts can be minimized and decisions can be made keeping the stages of moral development of Kohlberg theory in mind. As an individual, it is our responsibility to give coral greater capacity to respond, adapt, and survive. To control this issue, we can stop buying sunscreen which has harmful chemical ingredients like oxybenzone and oxytocin, or simply just stop using it and look for alternatives like wearing long sleeve rash guards and using lotions that do not have the same impact. Also, manufacturers of products and cosmetics play a crucial role in promoting and advertising their products ethically and should follow regulations regulated by the government or regulatory agency by providing enough information on ingredients and labeling it in understandable language so that consumer can make ethical choices. If we take these little decisions collectively, we can help the environment and humans. To ensure that the product is safe for the environment and humans, there are some recommendations that stakeholders can consider when producing, regulating, and buying the product of a particular brand. However, there is a question that often arises when it comes to whether banning certain chemical sunscreen is right or wrong. Based on the above discussion, we believe that it is important that we protect the environment and human health in the face of uncertain risk, and the fact that there are many safe alternatives that people can use until the uncertainty is resolved. We come to a conclusion that banning such product is not the wrong decision. We would like to hear your thoughts on whether it is right or wrong to ban products that have chemical ingredients in them and can affect the environment and humans.